Hey all, Paintmarine here with another Paintmarine's bookshelf, and today we're going to be going over the short story. It's kind of like two short stories, but it's bundled in one for only $3.99 American, so not a bad price at all. It is Ghost Speaks Not, and then Patience. They're both by James Sparrow. I remember the last name is, or no, not Sparrow, Swallow. Gotta pull it up real quick. Let me go back here real quick. All right, so yeah, James Swallow. I was close. They're both Sparrow, Swallow. It's all a bird. So, um, but yeah, so I want to talk over this. So the whole reason why I ended up reading this is I can't go into great detail, but I'm working on a project that somewhat has to do with this. So it's kind of more of a research read than necessarily something I would pick up on my own. But that being said, I'm very glad that I read it just because it's a very interesting story. It's very good, and I really came to enjoy one of the characters in it that was kind of focused for me. Now, the story kind of focuses on the knights errant, or a portion of them. If you're not familiar with the knights errant, they were essentially a special operations or spec ops version, sort of kind of team that was developed in the early years of the Inquisition, before the Inquisition was really a thing. I can't remember his exact title, but his name was Malachor. He was kind of the right-hand man, human, non-transhuman, to the Emperor. So kind of second in command of Terra and everything, next to the Emperor. But like I said, it was not like augmented in any kind of way. After the Horus Heresy, he kind of took more of an active role, and there's almost like, aside from the Horus Heresy, there was like another, what they kind of call a silent war that was kind of happening between Malachor and those who were loyal to him, and then the rest of the Imperium, because a lot of people kind of thought that Malachor was trying to usurp the Emperor and use this as a way for himself to gain power, I guess. So it was a very interesting kind of sub-story and sub-war kind of, like a very covert secret spy, secret agent type of thing going on, while the major Horus Heresy stuff was going on as well. So all that's very interesting. And then on top of it all, the Knights Errant, which essentially, if you're not familiar, the Knights Errant isn't just like a 40k thing. It's kind of like a generalized thing throughout the history of old knights and stuff like that. But basically, a Knights Errant is a wandering knight, like one that hasn't pledged himself or a sword to a particular cause or house or kingdom. And so they're kind of wandering through the countryside, wilderness, or whatever have you will, looking for like a chivalrous or some sort of noble, just cause for them to take their sword and shield up and fight for. So that's basically what the Knights Errant were, and what that is essentially they took loyalists from the traitor legions that were still loyal, and made them knight errant. So basically stripped them of all their heraldry, their house, or their chapter, and made them the knights errant. So the most notable one of this would be Garrow. He was kind of like not the chapter master, but kind of like the first knight errant, kind of the leader of all of them, and tried to prove, he was a Death Guard captain, I believe the 7th Company. And he was the one with him and 70 other Death Guard got on board the Eisenstein and made their way toward Terra during the Istvan betrayal, and tried to race toward to warn the Imperium of the betrayal, of Horus's betrayal. So, and then all of that to be said, the Knights Errant would eventually transition and become the Grey Knights. But the Grey Knights were not, or the Knights Errant were not all transitioned over to the Grey Knights, because as we know, Grey Knights are mostly all psychers of some kind, um, but the Knights Errant, um, I don't know, not all of them were psychers. They were just, from different chapters, or whatever. They were basically a suicide squad, um, because they were from traitor legions, and they were used to basically, um, prove their loyalty. But with that proving of their loyalty, they usually got sent on missions where they were not going to come back from. So, yeah. And then, like I said, so then a lot of mostly the psyker ones were sent over and founded the Grey Knights. All right. So I think we kind of got a good idea of the background. Um, I think what is it called? Vengeful Spirit, I believe, is the one of the Horus Heresy books that focuses more on the Knights Errant, and then of course, there's Garrow, and then there's some audio dramas as well that he has. So there's a decent amount, like the Garrow book, and then a bunch of audio dramas that specifically focus on the Knights Errant. But as far as like the Horus Heresy story, I guess Vengeful Spirit is one that focuses a lot more on the Knights Errant as far as like the novels, without specifically focusing on them. It definitely has them pretty heavily in it. So I'm not sure exactly where in the timeline these short stories take place. The first one takes place kind of earlier on in the whole founding of the Knights Errant, and then Patience takes place after it's already been established for a decent amount, because our main kind of character it follows in Patience is first introduced and recruited in Ghost Speak Not. Alright, so this is where I guess we'll get into the spoiler alert thing. So if you want to read the short stories without any kind of spoilers or anything, this is the part where I ask, you part ways. Thank you for watching so far, and definitely check out the rest of the channel, all that, subscribe, all that greatness. And then for those that have either read it or don't care about spoilers, we're going to jump into it a bit here. Like I said, they're really quick and easy reads, so but I also, just like I said, I found them very entertaining. So first up we have the Ghost Speak Not. So essentially this is following, and I gotta grab my phone here, I have some little bit of notes on here. Her name is Amendra Kendall, the Argentina, hopefully I'm saying these right, Argentina Tertius, or Tertius, I don't know. And so basically she was a sister of silence that, as you kind of learn, and I don't know because I guess I haven't read a lot of these other books, but you learn, so she was a sister of silence that, I don't know, not necessarily broke her vows to the sisterhood, but something occurred between her and another sister of silence that they kind of briefly kind of have a confrontation in the beginning. That basically is kind of the catalyst that causes her to, I guess, leave the sisterhood and pledge herself in a different way. So she says that she's still keeping her vows, it's just that they're in a different way and all that. There's a lot of tension between her and her former sisters that she comes across. So pretty cool. So she's a null. So the Sisters of Silence, if you're not familiar with them, they are a null force. Basically, they have no presence in the warp, and they also kind of dampen or, I mean, dampens for sure, but I guess they kind of disrupt psychic abilities and that kind of thing, where they definitely cause a lot of pain and other issues too for those that have very strong psychic abilities. So anyway, so she's a null, and she becomes basically an agent of Malachor, and kind of recruited by him to carry out kind of like his plans and all that kind of stuff. And my understanding is they get kind of like a inscription tattoo thing or whatever, like the the Eye of the Inquisition that we all are familiar with now, but then it was pretty new. And it's made with some kind of liquid metal, I guess. I'm assuming it's some kind of like, in my mind, when I'm reading, I'm thinking of like mercury or something, like something that never like fully solidifies. So they've got like this weird like mercury tattoo that has the Inquisition eye. That basically at any time she can like take her glove off and be like this, and they're like, oh, okay, you have full authority. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was this serious type of thing. So she basically gets like this mission where they have to go and investigate this signal that they're getting from this world. That seems like there's potential traitors infiltrated this world. So they're trying to go there, but she wants to have a little extra muscle and firepower. So she goes to the 70. Now the 70 are the 70 Death Guard that escaped Esteban that are still loyal to the Emperor. They're being kind of held in like this, I don't know, kind of not quite a prison, but they're being held by the Sisters of Silence. Are basically they're kind of guarding them on some kind of fortress moon or whatever, or a fortress on the moon, Luna, right next to Terra, until they can figure out what to do. And now that when she goes to recruit some muscle from their number, come to find out they've been there for years. They haven't just it hasn't been recent. They've just been there, not doing anything for years, training, fighting with each other. They kind of have free range of their area. It sounds like it's a very open open population type prison for them. They have kind of free roam, but they are also guarded by Sisters of Silence. And there's like they talk about gun servitors and stuff set up to, make sure that they don't leave. So she goes and she recruits 2 Death Guard. And I'm trying to remember. I got his name on this other sheet here. His name is Heigl, I believe is his first name. I remember his last name. I just can't remember his first name. Or Helig. So it's Helig Galler, and another of his battle brother Kydra. So I have a few notes here, and this is kind of pertaining to I had to read this book, so I took a few notes for my project that I needed to know. So as far as Galler, he was definitely described as, says the legionary, narrow, scarred face was twisted in a grim sneer. So narrow face, scarred, kind of has a sneer. And then is later described as known to be grave but strong character. And they also have Kydra, who is known as like the Bull of Barbaros, which is the planet where the Death Guard come from. And he's kind of described as kind of just a little bit larger than normal for Adeptus Astartes. And anyway, so she comes to recruit him. Basically, none of the rest of the Death Guard are about it. You just have the 2 Galler and Kydra that say, okay, or not Kydra, it's Kyda, Kyda, Kyda. So they're the only ones that are like, okay, yes, we'll do it, or we'll accompany, or whatever it is, to kind of get out of there and get back in the fight. Kyda asks, do we get any of that new war gear like Garo and the others? Now, the war gear he's referring to is the Mark 6. And if you're not familiar, the Mark 6 is more notably known as the beaky armor. So the helmet is the more recognizable feature of that, where it is the kind of the beak helmet. And then the rest of the armor, it's pretty standard. The shins go right into the knee pad. This is one that doesn't have like the separate circle type knee pad. It is just like a straight up shin piece. And then it's said to be more maneuverable and quieter, I guess. And then usually the chest plate piece kind of had like that circle vent thing with kind of the X or the cross. I don't know, what, tubing, piping, whatever you want to call it, power cabling. And like I said, then just kind of like this circle vent looking thing. And then a little bit different from the rest of the power packs, I guess, for the Mark 6 or whatever. They had like extra cabling on it, and that's presented in some of the artwork. And if you go on Forge World and stuff like that, if you look at the model that they have for Garo, his backpack has like this little extra cabling that goes kind of like over. It's like on the like right behind the shoulders that they like kind of come up and over, and then otherwise it looks pretty regular. And then of course his is a little bit more ornate, but generally they were not ornate at all. They didn't have like extra skulls or anything like that. They were just plain gray armor or gray ceramite. They weren't painted, and then they had no markings of any kind as far as like a chapter. They might have like a studded pauldron on that side, and on the other side, if they did have anything, they would have the emblem of the sigillite of Malachor, or which is pretty much a very stylized version of the Inquisitional eye before it became what it is today, or what we know of as it is today. It was a little bit more stylized, a little bit different looking. Um, so yeah, so Kaida asked that, and she responds with, "Unfortunately, no, not right now. Um, you're not going to get that." So it's interesting because the horse heresy happened. There's the traitor legions, and they're about to go on this mission. And while they're on this mission, they're wearing their it doesn't specify what mark it is, but most likely Mark III, because they're Death Guard, and that seemed to be kind of like their go-to armor that they would wear. But at the very least, it does describe that they were still in their Death Guard colors, like that kind of cream-ish bone kind of white with their green and the Death Guard symbol and everything. So they go and they're investigating where the signal is, and of course they start to notice there's like corruption and all this other stuff going on. It's very good. It's good. It's a very good, but then it definitely kind of jumps. There's a point where they show up and they start investigating, and all of a sudden it jumps, and they've been there for a long time, and then one of the member gets killed. It's a little bit jarring, but it is a short story, and this definitely could have been made into a much larger story. I'm sure they could have even stretched it into a novel. But because it's a short story, it had to really get to the point quickly, so they kind of skip ahead. During the whole process, you also find out that at some point, Galor and Kendall, is that her name? I can't remember now. I'm gonna double check before I. Yeah, Kendall had actually fought on the battlefield before together when she was still a Sister of Silence. And Gallo remembers, and he mentions it was when they were fighting the Jorgal, not sure which way, but it is a species of telepathic cyborg Xenos. To me, sounds like the Borg. Kind of like telepathically, they can speak to each other through the hive mind or the Borg collective, and they are cyborg Xenos. I think that'd be kind of cool if somehow this was like actually, because it's, the Jorgal, the Borg. I don't know. Maybe they can make it some way. But anyway, so they had invaded the Imperial space inside a vast bottle world, which I'm not sure what that is, and then they were targeted for purges. I'm not even sure if they show up in a book somewhere. That might be an interesting book to read or get into. It sounds like the Death Guard were at least sent with some silence, because of the telepathic thing. I'm sure they sent Sisters of Silence to kind of null them out to these cyborg Xenos. So that sounds really cool. But then there was also a quote that I put down here from the book, or the story, that I found really, really good. And that was that Galler said that we have both become ghosts, haunting our former lives. It would be well to free, or to feel useful once again. So he's talking about obviously the Death Guard betrayal and how he left that, and then her leaving the Sisters of Silence and all that. So when they were first being recruited, he was like, it would be great to feel useful once again. Alright, let's see here. What else I have for my notes? Okay, so the next ones come from Silence, so I'll get into that in a second. So, without going too into the details, like I said, there's spoilers, but I don't want to spoil the complete thing if you haven't read it yet. Overall, it was great. Like I said, it was a really easy read. It was very quick. I kind of wish it was almost longer. I feel like it could have been longer because I really got interested in Kendall and Galler and their whole relationship and just the whole idea of this kind of early Inquisitor strike force or retinue, if you will, kind of going out and doing their thing. Um, yeah, like they show up, they're wearing their Death Guard armor, and so a lot of the population is kind of confused, and then that also kind of plays into something later on, where basically they were initially happy that they thought Death Guard were there. So if that tells you the whole kind of the governing populace there seems to have pledged their allegiance or something to Horus, which isn't. It's not evidently. It's not known right away in the story of the characters, but I mean, as soon as you read it and they show up, there's something that I just felt. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I was just like, oh, okay, the whole world, or at least the governing population, is probably pledged themselves to Horus or something like that. So in that aspect, I guess it seemed a little bit. I don't want to say not cookie cutter is not the word, but it was obvious. I guess it was just very like, oh, of course, yeah, yeah, I saw that coming. There wasn't any huge surprises at all. Um, yeah. Um, and then at the end, and this is a huge spoiler, so I'm gonna pause or draw this out a little bit. So if you don't want to hear about it, this is the time to then stop or and then like give me like I don't know 5 minutes or something. If that, I would probably wouldn't need that. But the ending was pretty awesome, pretty epic. Um, and it's when Kendall orders exterminatus on the planet, which the way she goes about it, and it's the last having the last word of the story was exterminatus, which was pretty epic, pretty awesome. Um, but something I didn't know in reading this, she was the first human. I'm not sure how many since then, but she was the absolute first human to order exterminatus. Before then, it was only known for the Emperor or Primarchs to do it. Not even Space Marines had done it. Other than Primarchs, but they're not really Space Marines or Primarchs. So yeah, so only the Emperor and Primarchs had ever ordered exterminatus, but that doesn't mean that she didn't have the authority to. She did have the authority, and of course with her little thing and all that. But it's just they had never done it. They usually consulted others or whatever, and then they ended up being the ones to do it. But because of the circumstances and she wouldn't have had time to go all the way back to Terra, let them know what was going on, for them to then send something back over. It would have been too much time wasted. The enemy could recuperate, regroup, all that kind of stuff. So basically, because of the needs of it needing to be immediate, she did it, and it was pretty awesome. And like I said, from a kind of a I don't know artistic, stylized viewpoint, it was awesome. Like the very last word being exterminatus, like just picturing that, and then it's like I don't know how other people's read, but I almost sometimes when I read some of these stories, I just think like how awesome this would be to see, like on a screen or on a like a TV show or a movie or something. So like as I'm watching the scene in my mind, um, she goes to the bridge, the camera just zooms in close on her, and she said, she's just standing there defiantly. She's like, exterminatus, holds up her hand with a sigil. You can just kind of like this, so it's kind of focused, but you can still see her face right next to the hand, and then it just fades to black or just cuts to black. Just you don't even see the firing of the thing. It just cuts. Yeah, pretty sweet. Um, but yeah, so that is pretty much the gist of that story. Patience is even shorter. Basically, Galler returns, and again another spoiler alert about the ghosts speak not. Kaida is killed. Unfortunately, he gets mobbed by just the whole population essentially. So yeah, unfortunately he dies. So to Patience, Galler is sent out to basically find Garrow, his former captain, company captain, and finds him on this planet that had been bombarded from orbit, and finds him standing in front of what looks to be some sort of he said he calls it a dragon because there is no other word that could describe this creature that has tentacles and talons and wings and tails and all this. It describes quite the creature, and for all intents and purposes, just calls it a dragon. And Garrow's kind of standing there waiting in front of this thing and won't look at him, and it's just kind of like he's already killed it. I don't know what he's doing, and he's like, "Hey, I was sent to come and find you. We need to get out of here," but he doesn't really move. It also kind of goes into he feels a lot of distance between himself and his former company captain. And he says he feels like a lot of that is because Garo was Terran born and Galler was Barbaros born. And once they left the Death Guard, they really didn't have anything connecting them because that's all that really connected them as brothers. And then once they left the Death Guard, it seemed like the distance between them grew. Where before they could kind of ignore it and it didn't seem like a big deal because of the fact they were both Death Guard. So he says, with that gone, with no connection between us but storm gray armor, I feel less able to ignore the disparity. So again, that's just him talking about this distance that he has. And then another thing I just pointed out because it was part of my research thing is like I glance at him, the ruby-eyed slits of my beaked helmet scanning the hard planes of his face. So at this point now I know for sure, and then again when he says that his storm gray armor, Galler has officially been given Mark 6. He's got the beaky armor and he's got the gray armor of the Knights Errant. He's no longer wearing his Death Guard colors. So I thought that was interesting to make note, just that he's officially kind of shifted over, if you will. So, all right, and then as far as that, like I said, it's a really short. It's only like 3 pages, but that was on the EPUB version. Well, I mean, I guess it's all EPUB now. You can't get it hard copy, but it was only about like I guess 3 pages on my reader anyway. So it's really quick. They're looking for him. They find him. This creature that looks defeated is actually not defeated. It still has to be finally defeated, this demon thing from the warp. And he's basically waiting there in the patience. He's waiting for it to come back alive so he can finally kill it for good. And the disparity kind of gets brought up as a way to show that Garo potentially doesn't even see it that way, doesn't really care. They're there for a purpose, and they're going to do that purpose is to fight for the Imperium, fight for the Emperor, and protect mankind, because the creature comes back alive and he invites Galler to fight by his side once again and defeat this creature. So if anything, the two of them are going to have that to then reconnect them, that they fought together and defeated this dragon demon thing once and for all. Yeah. So, all right, well, I think I have talked in decent length on both of those. Like I said, they're both very good. I have definitely a new appreciation for the Death Guard, not necessarily Death Guard as a whole. Like, they haven't ever been a Legion that I was all like, oh yeah, Death Guard. But I definitely have enjoyed learning about the 70, which I really had no knowledge of or information about before, about the loyalist Death Guard that left. So I definitely have a lot more knowledge and respect for the 70, and particularly Galler. I've become a little bit more attached to his character, and it's too bad that it seems like, aside from these 2 stories, and I guess there's a mention potentially from what I've seen, researched or looked for in Vengeful Spirit, but I don't believe it's anything too extensive. But yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed this book, or short story, novella, whatever you want to call it. And for only $3.99 American, it's definitely worth a read if you're at all interested in, one, just a quick read, quick short story, but then also the Knights Errant and some of the first, I guess, inductees into that and everything there. So, all again, very cool, unique read. Something that I would have never necessarily picked up. Um, Not because I have no interest in it, just because I had no real knowledge of it before that this story or this particular characters even existed. So there's so many novels out there, and especially the Horse Heresy series is just like forever long. Um, and then they have all these like kind of short story and online EPUB only short stories type of thing now. Anyway, you can really kind of get lost in the sea of things. So. All right, well, I think finally with all that, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed kind of this breakdown of everything and kind of what I found interesting about this story. And if you would, I would definitely appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. Definitely check out the rest of the videos that I have here. Also in the description, I'll have a link to the Facebook page. Definitely check me out there and see what I got going on there. I update that pretty regularly with different projects that I have going on the modeling and painting hobby side of things. I've also got an Instagram at the Paintmarine, which I update pretty regularly. Not quite as regular as Facebook, but it's pretty regular as well. So if you want to give me a follow there, I'd greatly appreciate it. So, all right. Well, again, thank you, and until next time.